The stars had never looked so cold. Commander Zara stood at the viewing window of New Haven Station, her 4 hands pressed flat against the glass. Beyond the station's shield bubble, another ship was dying. The Vorak had found them again. Their crystalline warships glided through space like silver blades, cutting apart the Centauri defense fleet as though it were made of paper. Coalition vessels burned, one after another, turning into drifting clouds of glowing gas. "That was the last of them," reported Captain Velter from his console. The bird-like Ari officer's feathers lay flat against his head, a sign of deep fear. 47 ships destroyed in less than an hour. The Centauri fleet is gone. Zara's skin flushed a sick gray. Her people, the Quillen, showed their emotions through their skin pigments. Gray meant despair. "How many systems have we lost this month?" she asked. Neb Alpha, the Coalition's Nebulan delegate, floated above its grav chair. Its gaseous body pulsed dimly with fatting blues. 6, it answered softly. "The Vorak are moving faster now. They don't even bother capturing worlds anymore. They annihilate everything and move on." The council chamber buzzed with hopeless voices. 12 species were represented here, 12 species that had once believed themselves strong enough to shape the future of the galaxy. Yet every face around the holographic table looked defeated. The Vorak had been waging war for 10 years. What began as border raids had become extinction. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, their shields impenetrable. Worse, they seemed to know every move the Coalition would make. Every ambush collapsed into massacre. Every defensive stand became a tomb. Admiral Corks, the oldest among them, rose from his seat. His body was metal forged from centuries of war. Deep scratches marred his armored shell. "We must face the truth," he said. "We cannot win. Perhaps it is time to surrender." The chamber erupted in furious debate. Some shouted for defiance, others for retreat. But Zara heard only the hollow tone in Corks's voice. No one here had a plan. Their strength, their science, their unity, none of it had saved them. She raised all 4 arms. "Wait." The council chamber fell silent. Her voice cut through the air with quiet steel. "There is one option we have not tried, the Hero Protocol." Murmurs spread like wildfire. The Hero Protocol was ancient, older than most civilizations at the table. It had been written in an age of myths, when people still believed legends could save them. Captain Velter's beak clicked nervously. "Commander, that protocol is thousands of years old. A fairy tale. We cannot gamble our survival on stories." "Desperate times," Zara replied. Her skin shifted toward dark violet determination. She stepped to the central console. With careful precision, she entered codes untouched for millennia. Warning lights bloomed. Power surged into the long-range communications array. The Hero Protocol was simple. When all else failed, when extinction loomed, it sent one final message across the galaxy. Not to governments, not to fleets, to individuals, to anyone who still believed in the word hero. Zara recorded the message herself. Her voice trembled but did not break. "To all who hear this transmission, the Galactic Coalition faces annihilation. The Vorak Empire has destroyed our fleets and consumed our worlds. We have tried every strategy and we have failed. If there are heroes among the stars, not mercenaries, not politicians, but true defenders, we beg you to answer our call. We cannot offer riches. We cannot promise survival. But if you believe in what is right, if you are willing to stand against darkness, come, please. Time is running out." The message left New Haven Station, carried faster than light, racing to every corner of the galaxy. Then there was nothing to do but wait. 2 days passed, no reply. By the end of the week, over 300 responses had trickled in. The warrior monks of Andros declined, already locked in a war with the Machine Collective. The ghost fleet of the Void Runners demanded payment the Coalition could not afford. Some offered sympathy, others excuses. A few promised they were too far away to help. 300 messages, and not a single offer of real aid. Zara's skin shifted darker gray. She had gambled everything on hope, and hope had betrayed her. "Heroes are myths," Admiral Corks muttered. "Stories we tell children. In the real galaxy, there are only armies and treaties." But then, on the 8th day, one final transmission arrived. The signal was weak, riddled with static. The language harsh, almost primitive. Translation algorithms struggled, filling the chamber with broken syllables and electronic noise. At last, the computer pieced together meaning. "Coalition forces, this is Earth Command. Distress call received. Message understood. We are coming. Estimated arrival 3 months. Hold the line until then, Earth out. The chamber froze. Every representative turned toward the holographic display. The origin of the signal blinked in the corner. Earth, whispered Neb Alpha, its gaseous body flickered with confusion. That is the death world we catalogued, Class 12, atmosphere unstable, weather lethal, predators beyond reason. Captain Velter skimmed the old files. Humans, he read aloud. Pre-warp civilization, violent, territorial, lifespan 60 to 80 years, aggressive tendencies, constant warfare. Admiral Corks's mechanical voice echoed with disgust. We called for heroes, we get savages. But Zara felt something she had not felt in months. Hope, fragile, trembling, but real. They are the only ones who said yes, she reminded them. Everyone else wanted payment or excuses. The humans simply said they are coming. Coming to die, Velter countered. The Vorak will crush them in minutes. Maybe, Zara admitted. But maybe that is exactly why we need them. The Vorak have beaten every civilized fleet. They know our tactics, they know our fear, but they have never faced anyone like these humans. Silence stretched across the chamber. For the first time in years, the possibility of a different future lingered in the air. 3 months, could they survive that long? Could anyone? Zara returned to her quarters and stared out into the endless stars. Somewhere, across light years of darkness, beings she had never met were traveling to answer her plea. She did not know what they looked like. She did not know how they fought. She did not even know if they truly understood what they were walking into. But she knew this. When the galaxy called for heroes, they were the only ones who answered. She pressed her hands against the cold glass, watching another world burn in the distance. 3 months was an eternity. But if the humans were coming, then maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was not finished yet. And in that fragile sliver of hope, Zara found the strength to keep fighting. 3 months passed like a nightmare. The Vorak advanced without mercy. 2 more coalition systems fell, their cities reduced to ash. Refugee convoys staggered into New Haven Station, filled with survivors who had lost everything. The coalition fleet was down to scattered fragments, barely holding the line. Commander Zara lived in a haze of exhaustion. She coordinated defenses, patched together fleets, and listened to desperate pleas from worlds she could not save. Every night she told herself the same thing, hold on, just hold on, they're coming. But as the days dragged into weeks, even hope began to rot. When the alarms blared, she thought it was another Vorak assault. Unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace, Captain Velter cried from his console. His feathers bristled in alarm. Configuration unknown, 15 vessels. Zara sprinted to the command deck. She expected to see Silver Death, Vorak blades cutting toward them. Instead, her breath caught. Through the viewing windows, a fleet hung in the darkness, ships unlike any she had ever seen. They were ugly things, brutal and angular, armor plating scarred from battles. Railguns and missile pods bolted onto hulls like spikes on an angry beast. Some bore crude repairs, mismatched panels, and welding scars that looked more like survival than craftsmanship. They look feral, whispered Neb Alpha. Its gaseous body flickered with uncertain light. Admiral Corks's metallic voice rasped. Every one of those is a warship, and the largest, a mining vessel converted into a fortress. Along its scarred hull, painted in crude human script, were 2 words, UES Vengeance. Incoming transmission, the comm officer reported. The main screen flickered. A human appeared, shorter than most coalition species, with pale skin, dark hair graying at the edges, and scars that spoke of old battles. His eyes were cold, sharp, unyielding. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. 3 months ago, you called for heroes. We received your message. We're here to deal with your Vorak problem. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Commander Zara forced her skin to remain calm purple, though her hearts thundered. Admiral Morrison, I am Commander Zara of the Galactic Coalition. Your response is welcome, but you must understand the Vorak. We've read your reports, Morrison interrupted, his voice flat. Doesn't change anything. Send us their next target and we'll handle it. Zara blinked. No formal greetings, no cultural exchanges, no negotiations, just cold certainty. Admiral, the Vorak have destroyed fleets 10 times larger than yours, Captain Velter protested. They have centuries of technological advantage. They will annihilate you. For the first time, Morrison smiled. It was not warm, it was predatory. Good, he said. That means they'll be confident. Confident enemies make mistakes. The transmission cut. The council chamber erupted in whispers of disbelief. They're insane, Admiral Corks muttered. Completely insane. But Zara remembered the human, scarred face. That was not insanity, that was survival. 2 hours later, a shuttle docked with New Haven Station. The coalition prepared a full diplomatic reception, banners, translators, ceremonial guards. They expected an entourage, maybe dozens of human officials. Instead, 3 humans walked into the chamber. Admiral Morrison, Lieutenant Katie Walsh, his tactical officer, a woman with short red hair, eyes like knives, and the coiled stance of a predator. And Dr. Lisa Grant, an older scientist with gray streaks in her hair and a gaze that dissected everything it touched. Dr. Grant, Morrison introduced curtly. She studies enemy weaknesses. Walsh handles strategy. I handle command. Dr. Grant stepped forward immediately, scanning Zara with a handheld device. Fascinating skeletal structure. Aquatic ancestry. Joint flexibility suggests adaptation for 3-dimensional movement. Zara flushed violet with embarrassment. Doctor, perhaps we should focus on strategy. This is strategy, Grant replied without hesitation. If we're to fight together, I need to understand your physiology. For instance, your skin changes color with emotion. That could be useful in psychological warfare. Walsh circled the holographic display of coalition defenses. Her tone was blunt, cutting. Your formations are stretched too thin. You're trying to protect everything, so you protect nothing. That's why you keep losing. Captain Velter bristled. We must defend our colonies. No, Walsh snapped. You must win the war, everything else is secondary. Morrison studied tactical maps of Vorak engagements. His scarred fingers traced their perfect formations. They fight like machines, predictable, overwhelmed defenses. Move on, you call this flawless, I call it boring. They are flawless, Admiral Corks protested. No weakness. Morrison's cold smile returned. Everyone has weaknesses. They've been fighting civilized opponents too long. They've forgotten how to fight dirty. Dr. Grant glanced up from her scans. Admiral, I've identified 17 vulnerabilities in their ship design. Shields optimized for energy weapons, vulnerable to mass drivers. Formations assume opponents won't sacrifice ships. They never planned for an enemy who fights like a cornered animal. Like us, Morrison said. Walsh's voice was sharper than a blade. Their biggest weakness is that they've never fought anyone crazy enough to ram them. The coalition officers recoiled. Ramming was barbaric, forbidden under civilized codes of war. That's suicide, Velter snapped. That's victory, Morrison replied coldly. You've spent centuries trying to survive. We don't fight to survive, we fight to win. Big difference. Zara's skin darkened to uneasy purple. These weren't the heroes she had prayed for. They were something far more dangerous. The first joint briefing was chaos. Coalition officers presented intelligence. Vorak ships were crystalline, self-repairing, their shields impenetrable. Energy weapons burned through any known armor. Their fleets fought in flawless diamond formations, every movement synchronized. The humans listened, silent, taking notes, but their questions were strange. Do they have backup life support? Morrison asked. How do they clear debris during battle? Walsh pressed. What happens if their command ship is destroyed? Grant added. Questions no coalition tactician had ever bothered to ask. You're thinking about this all wrong, Morrison said finally. You try to beat them at their game. That's why you lose. We'll fight on our terms. Chaos, deception, brutality. We'll make them bleed in ways they've never imagined. Zara stared at him, her skin rippled uncertain blue. Admiral, are you saying you will not fight by coalition law? Morrison's scarred face was unreadable. Laws are for peace. War is about survival. You called for heroes. What you got is us. His words echoed through the chamber like a judgment. For the first time, Zara wondered if summoning humans had been salvation, or the beginning of a nightmare the galaxy would never forget. The coalition training grounds had once been a place of discipline and order. Flight formations practiced in perfect symmetry. Troops drilled in neat ranks, their every movement precise. That order shattered the day Colonel Danny Wright arrived. He was not what the aliens expected a human officer to be. Compact, scarred, with a voice that carried across the hangars like a thunderclap. He wore no ceremonial armor, no polished insignia, just worn fatigues and the confidence of someone who had survived wars no one should have lived through. "You think too much," he told the RE pilots assembled before him. His voice was blunt, clipped, uncompromising. "You wait for the perfect firing solution, the perfect plan. Meanwhile, your enemy is shooting you in the face." The pilots shifted uncomfortably on their perches, their feathers ruffled with indignation. One raised a talon nervously. "Colonel Wright, with respect, our tactics are based on centuries of losing," Wright snapped. "The Vorak don't care about your centuries. They care that you're predictable, that every time they poke you, you flinch the same way. That ends now." He activated the holographic display. The Kepler battle replayed. Human ships diving through energy beams, ramming crystalline hulls, exploding reactors in suicidal strikes. The aliens gasped in horror. "That's madness," one shouted. "That's war," Wright barked. "You people keep trying to live through it. We don't fight to live. We fight to win. If living happens after, good. If not," he shrugged, "then at least we take the bastard with us." The room fell silent. For species who had evolved on gentle garden worlds, the human philosophy was unthinkable, but it was impossible to argue with the results. Across the station, Dr. Lisa Grant was conducting her own kind of training, dissecting weaknesses no coalition doctor had ever considered. She had studied Quillan biology, RE nervous systems, nebulan gas dispersal patterns. What she found unsettled her. "These species evolved for cooperation, not conflict," she explained to Morrison during a private briefing. "Their fight-or-flight instincts lean almost entirely toward flight. In real danger, their bodies tell them to run. They're not built to stand and kill." Morrison's face darkened. "Can we fix it?" "Not in time," Grant admitted. "This is millions of years of evolution. You can't override it with drills, but—" She leaned forward, her gray eyes sharp. "Fear works both ways. The Vorak are shaken after Kepler. They've never faced an enemy that fights like us. They're starting to hesitate." Morrison tapped his scarred fingers on the table. "Good. Fear makes people stupid. We'll make them afraid of the dark." The training yards became laboratories of madness. Human instructors tore apart coalition tactics, replacing them with brutal improvisation. Ships practiced ramming maneuvers. Infantry drilled with crude projectile weapons that horrified alien officers. Mines, traps, ambushes, strategies dismissed as barbaric were now drilled into every recruit. Lieutenant Walsh oversaw starship exercises with merciless precision. "Stop flying like you're on parade," she snapped at a squadron of RE fighters. "Break formation, scatter, confuse their targeting. You're not pretty birds, you're knives in the dark, act like it." One young pilot trembled. "But without formation, how do we protect each other?" "You don't," Walsh said coldly. "You protect the mission. You kill the enemy so fast they don't have time to kill your wingmate. And if they do, you finish the job anyway." The aliens exchanged nervous glances. This was not how wars were fought, not with honor, not with rules, but under the weight of human stares they obeyed. Commander Zara watched it all with unease. Everywhere she looked, humans were reshaping her people into something unrecognizable. Quillan soldiers painted their armor black, mimicking human camouflage. RE pilots screamed war cries taught by Colonel Wright before diving into practice runs. Even the nebulans, normally serene, pulsed in aggressive colors as they experimented with chemical dispersal attacks. Zara's skin rippled with conflicted shades. Was this salvation or corruption? She found herself walking beside Morrison one evening watching his soldiers spar. They fought without elegance, every move designed to cripple or kill. No wasted effort, no hesitation. "You are turning us into monsters," she said quietly. Morrison didn't look at her. His scarred face remained fixed on the training yard. "No, I'm reminding you what monsters look like, because the Vorak already are. If you want to survive them, you don't need heroes. You need something worse." Her heart's twisted. "And when the war is over, what will we become then?" Morrison finally turned, his eyes like stone. "Alive." The Vorak counterattack came sooner than expected. 3 full battle groups, 60 ships, descended on the Titan Nebula where the human fleet had taken refuge. The coalition panicked. 60 ships, triple the size of the human task force. Even Zara's skin bled gray with fear. But Morrison was calm. "Perfect," he muttered. "Their angry enemies stop thinking." The Titan Nebula was a graveyard of ancient battles. its clouds thick with iron storms and drifting wreckage. Most commanders avoided it. Morrison had spent weeks seeding it with mines, hidden turrets, and debris fields that could turn into weapons. "This place isn't a nebula anymore," he told his officers. "It's a trap." When the Vorak fleet entered, the trap closed. From the bridge of the UES Rattlesnake, Captain Jenny Brooks grinned as her patched-together freighter darted through the glowing gas clouds. She had once been a cargo hauler, sneaking shipments through pirate space. Now her ship was a predator. "Contact," her gunner shouted. A Vorak destroyer loomed ahead, crystal hull glowing like a knife. Brooks slammed the throttle. Her ship burst from the nebula and raked the destroyer with railgun fire before vanishing back into the storm. "This is Rattlesnake," she crackled over the comm. "Splash 1 destroyer moving to secondary." The Coalition officers monitoring the battle gaped in disbelief. Human ships weren't fighting in formation at all. They attacked like a pack of wolves, each vessel lunging from cover, striking, vanishing again. The Vorak formation began to unravel. In the heart of the storm, Captain Tony Martinez's ship, the Bulldog, was cornered by 3 Vorak cruisers. His freighter was little more than explosives strapped to an engine. "They've got us boxed," his first officer said, voice shaking. Martinez lit a cigarette, calm as death. "Then we blow the box." He detonated the cargo bay, turning his entire ship into a fragmentation bomb. Shards of hull plating ripped through Vorak shields, tearing them apart. "Bulldog to all units," Martinez's voice came over the radio, strained but alive. "Lost half my ship, but I'm still flying. Turns out crystal ships don't like rocks moving fast." Even Admiral Corks, watching from the Coalition flagship, pulsed faint yellow respect. From the Vengeance, Walsh coordinated the chaos. Her voice was cold, ruthless, efficient. "Grid 7, flagship moving, converge now." The human fleet surged, ragged and bleeding, but relentless. They didn't move like a fleet. They moved like predators circling prey. On the Coalition command deck, Zara could hardly breathe. The Vorak were unraveling. Their perfect formations crumbled under the storm. Her skin shimmered with awe and dread. "These aren't heroes," Admiral Corks whispered. His mechanical voice carried something dangerously close to reverence. "They're monsters." And Zara knew he was right. But as she watched the Vorak flagship falter under human assault, for the first time in years, she let her skin flush bright blue. Hope. The Kepler system had been peaceful once. Its twin suns lit glittering asteroid belts and fertile worlds, where alien children once played under crystal skis. Now 12 Vorak warships hung in orbit, their crystalline hulls gleaming like daggers. The evacuation convoys were already fleeing. Dozens of civilian transports, overloaded and crawling toward the jump point, trailed energy signatures like wounded prey. The Vorak moved in perfect diamond formation, weapons charging to cut the helpless vessels apart. "They'll intercept within 20 minutes, Captain Velter reported on the Coalition flagship Harmony. His feathers lay flat against his skull, despair seeping through every movement. Admiral Corks's metallic jaw ground in frustration. "Where are the humans? They promised us this system would hold." "Unknown," Zara admitted, her skin bleeding gray. She stared at the tactical display, watching her people's doom draw closer. Maybe they never came, maybe Earth lied, maybe. "New contacts," the sensor officer shouted. 15 vessels dropping out of hyperspace. The Coalition command deck erupted. Zara's skin flashed violet with sudden shock. She rushed to the viewport. Human ships burst into reality like predators leaping from cover, and they were already firing. Unlike every fleet she had ever seen, the humans arrived in chaos. No formations, no careful positioning. Each vessel attacked from its own angle, weapons blazing before their drives even cooled. "This is Hammer Actual," a voice crackled over the comm. A thin human with manic eyes filled the screen, his scarred ship little more than a cargo hauler strapped with guns. "We're going in hot. Recommend you keep back unless you want to get splashed by debris." The transmission cut before anyone could answer. Zara gripped the railing. "By the stars." The humans charged. The Vorak fleet responded with machine precision. Crystal ships turned in perfect synchronization, weapons lancing out in a wall of light. Energy beams cut space into ribbons. Any civilized fleet would have been vaporized. But the humans didn't fight like civilized fleets. Their ships twisted and rolled like living things. Armor boiled away, atmosphere vented into the void, and still they kept coming. A direct hit slammed into the hammer, tearing half its hull open. Any coalition vessel would have disintegrated instantly. Instead, the human ship surged forward, leaking fire and bodies. "Hammer to all units," Captain Phillips's voice crackled through static. He sounded almost cheerful. "We've got their attention, now hit 'em while they're looking at us." Coalition officers gasped. To throw away a ship so casually, to use one's own crew as bait, it was unthinkable, barbaric. But it worked. The humans fought like predators unleashed. When one ship's engines failed, its captain redirected emergency thrusters and rammed headlong into a Vorak cruiser. Both vessels vanished in a blossom of crystal shards and plasma fire. Another vessel, crippled and weaponless, vented its cargo hold into space. Metal fragments and spare hull plating shot forward at high velocity, shredding Vorak shields that had never been tested against kinetic impacts. "This is Rodriguez," a young woman's voice rang over the radio. "Ship's dead, thrusters online for 5 minutes, that's long enough." Her battered freighter accelerated straight at the largest Vorak warship. Concentrated fire tore it apart, but the wreck still struck home. The resulting explosion gutted the crystal ship's engines, leaving it drifting helplessly. The Coalition command deck was silent, stunned into disbelief. "They're insane," Admiral Corks whispered, his metal fists clenched. "Insane, but effective." On the Vengeance, Morrison stood unshaken as battle reports flooded in. "Enemy formation holding," Walsh reported, her voice calm, calculating. "But cracks are forming. They're trying to maintain discipline under random attack vectors. It's not working." "Target the command ship," Morrison ordered. His tone was quiet, absolute. "Cut off the head, the body dies." Human vessels, most little more than burning wrecks, pivoted as one toward the Vorak flagship. Their battered drives screamed. Weapons fired until barrels melted. When guns failed, they rammed. Captain Jenny Brooks, commanding a mining ship held together with scrap, made her decision. "This is Brooks," she said over comms. Her voice trembled, but only slightly. "Tell my kids I love them, hammer down." Her ship's reactor went critical as she steered it directly into the Vorak flagship. The explosion was a newborn star. Light bathed the system, turning crystal into shrapnel. When the glare cleared, the Vorak command ship was gone. The Vorak fleet faltered instantly. Their perfect diamond formation shattered. Individual captains, trained only for obedience, flailed without orders. The surviving humans tore into them mercilessly. 6 ships left, barely functional but relentless. They showed no mercy, no hesitation, no fear. By the time the last Vorak vessel cracked and fell silent, the Kepler system was littered with debris. Shards of crystal, drifting corpses, and human ships reduced to twisted skeletons of steel. "Kepler secure," Captain Phillips's battered voice declared. His ship was little more than wreckage welded around an engine core, yet his tone was triumphant. "Coalition forces, you can pick up your survivors now." Zara's skin flushed with disbelief. They won." "They didn't win," Corks corrected grimly. His metal frame leaned heavily on the railing. "They slaughtered." News of Kepler spread like wildfire. For the first time in a decade, the Vorak had not simply been slowed. They had been destroyed. An entire battle group annihilated by 15 primitive ships. On the Vorak homeworld, High Commander Thexville watched the recordings in growing rage. His crystalline body pulsed red with fury. "Run it again," he snarled. The holograms replayed, human ships tearing through flawless formations, suicide rams, reactor detonations. "Analysis," he demanded. Krill Nex, his strategist, hesitated. "High Commander, their tactics are irrational. They sacrifice valuable assets for minimal gain. It is illogical." "And yet they won," Thexville roared. His crystal shards cracked under the strain. "Find their weakness, or I will break you." But the weakness was not obvious. By all metrics, humanity should have been obliterated. Primitive weapons, crude ships, small crews, illogical behavior. And yet they had turned Kepler into a graveyard. Back on New Haven Station, the Coalition reacted with equal parts awe and horror. Colonel Wright trained alien soldiers to use human-style firearms. They drilled until their hands bled. "You can't hesitate," he barked. Hesitation gets you killed, and worse, it gets your squad killed. You don't think, you don't wait, you act. Lieutenant Walsh rewrote Starship tactics. Formations are dead, she told commanders. From now on, you scatter, hit from every direction, confuse them until they choke. If you can't win clean, win dirty. It's the only kind that matters. Dr. Grant's research disturbed her most. She found Vorak's psychology cracking. They've never lost like this before, she explained. They're shaken, they don't understand us, and what people don't understand, they fear. Commander Zara listened to it all, her skin shifting between awe and unease. The humans had done what no coalition fleet could dream of, but at what cost? She remembered Brooks's last words, "Tell my kids I love them." Were these the heroes she had asked for, or had she unleashed something the galaxy could never put back? The Vorak did not retreat quietly. 3 days after Kepler, their counterattack came. 60 ships, 3 entire battle groups, surged into the Titan Nebula. It was the largest fleet movement in a decade. Their crystalline hulls lit the storm clouds like blades catching firelight. On the Vengeance, Lieutenant Walsh's eyes narrowed as she studied the sensor readings. 60 confirmed, standard Vorak formation, their angry admiral. Good, Morrison said. His voice was calm, cold. Angry enemies make mistakes, and they just walked into the killing ground we built for them. The Titan Nebula seethed with ion storms and debris. To most fleets, it was a death trap. To humans, it was opportunity. Weeks of preparation had turned the storm into a weapon. Mines hidden in asteroid husks. Wreckage rigged with explosives. Sensor jammers buried in plasma clouds. Contacts entering kill zone, Walsh reported. Morrison leaned back in his chair, lighted up. The nebula exploded. Vorak ships vanished in blossoms of fire as hidden mines detonated. Electromagnetic pulses fried their targeting systems. Human vessels darted in and out of the storms, firing railguns, then vanishing like sharks in murky water. From the Rattlesnake, Captain Jenny Brooks laughed as her patched freighter streaked through the chaos. Got a destroyer limping, going for the kill. Her railguns hammered crystal until the ship cracked apart. She disappeared back into the storm before the Vorak could respond. On the Bulldog, Captain Martinez's ship was surrounded again. 3 cruisers boxed him in. He grinned, cigarette clamped in his teeth. Looks familiar. Orders, Captain? His officer asked, pale with fear. Martinez armed his remaining explosives. Blow the bay. The Bulldog erupted in a fragmentation storm. Shrapnel shredded Vorak shields, ripping into delicate crystal cores. 2 cruisers shattered instantly. Martinez's voice came through the comms, alive, laughing through static. Lost the cargo again, still flying. From the Vorak flagship, High Commander Thexville watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Maintain discipline, he roared. His crystal body pulsed with furious red light. High Commander, we cannot maintain formation, a captain replied, voice trembling. Our sensors are blinded, our targeting systems fail. Adapt, Thexville snapped. We have superior numbers, victory is inevitable. But victory was slipping away. The Vorak had spent centuries fighting civilizations that followed rules. They had no experience with predators who used their environment as a weapon. Every time they tried to regroup, a human ship burst from the storm and tore them apart. Walsh's voice was crisp, ruthless. Flagship at Grid 7, all units converge. Human ships, most barely functional, swarmed from the nebula. They struck from all directions, tearing into escorts, ignoring casualties, driving straight for the command vessel. On the Hammer, Captain Phillips's ship was venting fire, his voice ragged but steady. Got 10 minutes of life support left. Their shields are cracked on the port side. Punch through. Copy that, Hammer, Morrison replied. All units full assault. The human fleet accelerated. Every gun fired. When weapons ran dry, ships rammed. When reactors failed, captains overloaded them deliberately. 8 human vessels struck the Vorak flagship simultaneously, each one a suicide run. The Crystal Cathedral shattered in a storm of nuclear fire. The Vorak fleet broke. Without their command ship, their discipline collapsed. Captains fled blindly into the storm. Human vessels hunted them like wolves, tearing down scattered prey. When the smoke cleared, 60 Vorak ships were gone. Only 8 human ships limped out of the nebula, most barely more than skeletal frames. But they were still alive, and the Vorak were not. Zara's skin flushed with disbelief as she read the casualty reports. 60 ships, destroyed by 15. Admiral Corks's mechanical voice carried something like awe. Those aren't soldiers, they're predators. The galaxy reeled. The impossible had happened twice. On 100 worlds, alien citizens whispered the name human with awe and fear. Refugees cheered. Soldiers despaired that they would never match such savagery. Politicians debated whether inviting Earth had been salvation or a curse. The Vorak were no longer an unstoppable force. They were prey that bled, and fear spread through their empire like cracks through glass. On the Vorak homeworld, High Commander Thexville shattered a crystalline table with one blow. These humans, he spat, shards glittering at his feet. They violate every law of war. They fight without honor, without logic. They are monsters. Krill next bowed low. Yes, High Commander, monsters. Thexville's body pulsed with murderous red light. Then we will answer in kind. If monsters are what they want, we will show them terror beyond imagining. Back on New Haven Station, Coalition officers trained under human doctrine with growing dread. Colonel Wright had Quillen soldiers practicing knife drills. You stab until the other bastard stops moving, he barked. And if you run out of knives, use your teeth. Lieutenant Walsh forced Ari pilots through ramming simulations. Stop flinching, she snapped. The ship is already dead. Your only job now is to make sure the enemy dies with you. Dr. Grant presented her latest research in a briefing. Her face was pale, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. Admiral, I've studied Vorak communications. They're fracturing. Some factions demand surrender. Others want planet killers. A few talk of abandoning this entire region of space. Good, Morrison said simply. Fear makes people stupid. Keep pushing, break them. Zara's skin darkened in unease. And if they grow desperate, if they decide to strike at your homeworld? Morrison's scarred face turned toward her. His eyes were cold iron. Then they'll find out Earth is even worse than they imagine. The Vorak message came 3 days later. High Commander Thexville appeared on every Coalition channel, his crystalline body burning with crimson fury. Behind him stood the Vorak High Council, their faces etched with hatred and fear. To the humans and their allies, Thexville declared, his voice echoing across the galaxy, you have broken every law of civilized warfare. You fight like beasts without honor, without restraint. Very well. If you will not respect order, then you will face annihilation. Our surveyors have located your homeworld, this Earth you cherish. If you do not surrender within 72 hours, we will burn it. We will ignite your star and erase your species from existence. The transmission ended. Silence fell over the Coalition chamber. Zara's skin flushed purple with dread. They found Earth. Captain Velter's feathers quivered. They mean to destroy it. Even Admiral Corks's metal frame shuddered. This is the end. The Vorak will turn your sun into fire. Humanity will burn. All eyes turned to Morrison. He did not flinch. He leaned back in his chair, almost casual. Good, he said softly. They just told us where their homeworld is and exactly how long we have to get there. His scarred face hardened. 72 hours, that's all I need. The Vorak's ultimatum shook the galaxy. Civilizations whispered that it was over, that humanity had dared too much, and now they would be erased. Stellar converters were the stuff of nightmares, weapons that could turn stars into novas. No world could survive them, not even Earth. But Admiral Morrison's response stunned them all. 2 hours after the Vorak broadcast, his face appeared on Coalition networks. Calm, cold, defiant. High Commander Thexville, he said evenly. Thank you for telling us where your homeworld is. We've been looking for it. And thank you for the 72-hour deadline. That's exactly how long we'll need to get there. You think threatening our families makes us weak. It doesn't. It makes this personal. Earth doesn't surrender. Earth comes for you. The message ended with coordinates, the Vorak home system, and 3 words. Maximum aggression authorized. The second wave left Earth that same day. 50,000 volunteers. Converted cargo haulers, mining ships, even luxury liners with weapons welded to their hulls. Entire cities emptied, sending every ship that could fly into the void. Captain Bill Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Democracy, once a cruise liner, now bristling with missile pods where ballrooms used to be. His crew were farmers, students, retirees, anyone who could hold a gun or tighten a bolt. This is democracy to all units. Carter broadcast as the fleet formed up. Remember what they said, they'll burn our world, our families. That doesn't happen, not today, no mercy, no quarter, no survivors unless they surrender. The ragtag fleet cheered, a roar carried across comms. They weren't soldiers, they were monsters in the making. The Vorak prepared their defenses. Their home system was a fortress, 300 warships, orbital platforms, asteroid strongholds. Crystal cities glittered across the planet's surface, armed with planetary shields. Any rational enemy would have despaired. But the humans didn't come for reason, they came for blood. The battle began with madness. Human ships attacked from every direction at once. No careful formations, no unified lines, just chaos. They rammed through defenses, sacrificing hulls to tear holes in crystal formations. Captain Sarah Kim led a squadron of mining ships. "Mining squadron on me, hit the platforms first. We're not here to win pretty, we're here to win fast." Her ugly vessels dove headlong into Vorak orbital guns. Shields shattered, hulls cracked, but the platforms fell one by one under relentless kinetic fire. Colonel Wright led boarding actions on shattered stations. His Marines stormed crystal corridors with brutal efficiency, fighting with knives and rifles. "Push hard," he shouted. "If they're still breathing, they can still kill you. Put them down." Coalition observers recoiled at the brutality, but the Vorak defenders fell back in confusion. They had never faced enemies who turned captured weapons against them within minutes, who improvised bombs from crystal shards, who fought like demons in the dark. On the Vengeance, Walsh coordinated the chaos with clinical precision. "Sector 9 clear, redirect to Grid 5, enemy flagship moving." Human ships, barely held together, surged toward the Vorak command cluster. Explosions lit the system like fireworks. Civilian haulers dove into warships twice their size. Passenger liners fired nuclear warheads from their old swimming pools. The Coalition fleet hung back, stunned. They had expected a war. What they saw was extermination. Zara stood on the Harmony's bridge, her skin shifting in sickly shades. "They don't fight like soldiers," she whispered. "They fight like predators." Admiral Corks's mechanical voice carried something darker. "No, they fight like extinction itself." Thexville watched from his command bunker on the Vorak homeworld. His crystal body pulsed blood-red as human vessels tore through his defenses. "Unacceptable," he hissed. "This is our world, our throne. How dare these savages?" "High Commander," a subordinate cried. "Civilian channels are calling for surrender. They fear annihilation." "Silence them," Thexville thundered. His shards quivered with fury. "We will never bow to primitives." But fear was spreading. Entire Vorak cities trembled under the shadow of orbital fire. Civilians begged their leaders to yield. The invincible empire was cracking. Dr. Grant intercepted the signals first. "Admiral," she reported over comms, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I'm reading civilian transmissions. They're calling for their military to stand down. Their people are terrified of what we'll do next." Morrison's face was stone. "Broadcast to the system." Seconds later, his voice thundered across Vorak space. "This is Admiral Morrison of Earth. Your defenses are broken, your fleets are dead, but we are not here to exterminate your people. We are here to end a war. Surrender now and your civilians will be protected. Resist and we finish what you started." The words hit harder than any weapon. The Vorak had expected slaughter. Instead, they were offered survival, but only if they bent the knee. Thexville refused. From his bunker, he bellowed into the comms. "Do not listen, they are savages, monsters, we are the Vorak, we." But the broadcast cut. Colonel Wright's Marines stormed the command chamber. Shards of crystal littered the floor. Thexville's guards lay broken. Wright leveled his rifle at the High Commander. "Your war over," he growled. Thexville's crystalline body pulsed with one last burst of red rage. "You cannot rule us." Wright pulled the trigger. The Vorak High Commander shattered into 1,000 pieces. 6 hours later, the Vorak surrendered. The empire that had ruled 17 star systems collapsed in a single broadcast. Warships powered down. Orbital defenses fell silent. Civilians filled the channels with desperate pleas for mercy. The Coalition erupted in disbelief. Worlds that had lived in fear for a decade suddenly found the nightmare gone. The Vorak were finished. But the galaxy stared at the humans with new fear. Because it wasn't just victory, It was the way they had won. Through chaos, through sacrifice, through brutality no one else would even consider. They had not fought like heroes, they had fought like monsters. As the dust settled, Zara walked beside Morrison on the Vengeance. The ship's hull was scarred, patched with Vorek crystal. The admiral himself looked like death, eyes hollow, body rigid from exhaustion. "You've done what no one else could," she said softly, her skin shifted to uncertain violet. "You ended the war." Morrison didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on the void. "No," he said quietly. "We solved a problem, that's all." Her hearts tightened. "And what now? You hold their worlds, you could build an empire, you could rule the galaxy." At last, Morrison turned to face her. His scarred face was unreadable. "That's not our job. You called for help, we came. Now the threat is gone, we go home." Zara's skin flushed deep blue astonishment. "You mean to leave after all this?" Morrison's eyes were cold, but not cruel. "We didn't come to rule you. We came to save what was ours, remember that." The Vorek Empire was gone. For decades, their crystalline fleets had been the shadow that haunted every world. They had crushed armies, enslaved species, burned planets into ash. Civilizations had whispered that resistance was impossible. But now their fleets drifted as wreckage in their own skis. Their commanders lay shattered, their people on their knees. The unthinkable had happened. The monsters had bled. And it was humanity who had bled them. The Coalition Council convened in emergency session on New Haven Station. For the first time in years, there was no talk of retreat, no desperate pleas for aid. Instead, there was fear not of the Vorak, but of their new allies. Representatives stared across the chamber at Admiral Morrison and his officers. Scarred, exhausted, their uniforms scorched by war. Behind their eyes, only steel. "You mean to leave?" Neb Alpha asked, its gaseous body pulsing with disbelief. "The Vorak systems are undefended. Their worlds lie in chaos. You could rule them. Why not?" Morrison's reply was flat, almost weary. "Because that's not why we came. You called for help. We gave it. Now the threat is gone. We go home." Admiral Corks leaned forward, his metal frame creaking. "You shattered the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and you just walk away. Who does that?" Morrison's scarred face didn't change. "Humans, we don't want your thrones, we don't want your worlds, we just want our families safe." The chamber fell silent. For beings raised in cultures where power was everything, where wars were fought for territory and tribute, the idea was unthinkable. Later, Zara found herself walking beside Morrison along the Vengeance's scarred corridors. Vorek crystal lined the hull, patched crudely with human steel. Soldiers limped past, faces pale, uniforms torn. They looked like survivors of hell. "Do you understand what you've done?" Zara asked softly, her skin rippled uncertain purple. "You haven't just ended a war, you've changed the galaxy. No one will ever see you as heroes. They'll see you as," she hesitated, "as monsters." Morrison stopped. His eyes were cold but not cruel. "Good," he said, "let them." Zara's hearts clenched. "You want them to fear you." He shook his head. "No, but if fear keeps them from starting another war, then maybe it's worth it." She stared at him, her skin flickering between blue and gray. Heroes were supposed to inspire, to give hope. But these humans, they had saved the galaxy by showing everyone what real war looked like. Dr. Lisa Grant's final report spread across Coalition archives like wildfire. "The Vorak did not fall because of technology," it read. "They fell because they had forgotten what real survival looks like. Civilized war makes rules, humans break them. Civilized war preserves life, humans trade life for victory. Civilized war seeks honor, humans seek an end." Her closing line would be remembered for generations. The galaxy called for heroes. What it got was something far more dangerous. It got survivors. Colonel Wright stayed behind for weeks, drilling alien troops in brutal tactics. His training manuals circulated across Coalition militaries. "Stop thinking about survival," he wrote. "Start thinking about victory. If you can't stomach the cost, you already lost." Lieutenant Walsh left tactical algorithms behind, programs that simulated human-style chaos. Coalition admirals studied them with horror and fascination, learning to scatter, to deceive, to ram. The humans didn't just save the galaxy, they infected it. Their way of war spread like wildfire, reshaping every doctrine it touched. When the human fleet finally prepared to leave, the Coalition gathered on the docks. Zara stood at the front, her skin a deep, conflicted violet. She had called for heroes. She had prayed for salvation, and she had found it, but not in the form she had expected. Admiral Morrison walked past her, flanked by his scarred officers. He paused only briefly. "You kept the line," she said. "You gave us a reason," he answered. His eyes for once softened. "Don't waste it." Then he turned, boarding the Vengeance. The scarred flagship rose, engines burning against the void. One by one, the surviving human ships followed. No banners, no songs, no parades, just monsters limping home. The galaxy did not celebrate. It whispered. Stories spread of humans charging through fire, ramming ships 3 times their size, detonating their own reactors with laughter in their voices. Stories of enemies who had once been gods reduced to ash in days. Stories of men and women who looked death in the eye and smiled. Children across the stars grew up hearing the tale, not of heroes but of Earth's monsters. On the Vorak homeworld, ruins still smoldered. Survivors whispered of the day the sky burned, when monsters descended and shattered an empire that had ruled for generations. High Commander Thexvel's shattered remains lay sealed in a crystal vault, a warning and a memory. His last words echoed in Vorak records. "They are savages, monsters, and they are worse than us." The Vorak survivors would never forget, neither would the Coalition. Years later, Zara stood once more at the viewing window of New Haven Station. The stars looked different now, not as cold, not as hopeless, but also not as safe. Because somewhere out there, humans lived. Humans who had come when no one else would. Humans who had fought like demons. Humans who had left once their job was done, but who had shown the galaxy what monsters looked like. Zara pressed her hands to the glass, remembering Brooks's last words. "Tell my kids I love them." Remembering Morrison's cold stare, remembering the nebula burning with human fury. She whispered to herself, her skin flushing deep blue with a mix of awe and fear. They called for heroes, and Earth sent monsters. The words echoed in the chamber, heavy with truth. The war was over, the galaxy was free, but nothing would ever be the same again. Epilogue. On Earth, a farmer returned to his fields. A mechanic repaired broken shuttles. A child hugged her father, not knowing he had once rammed a warship larger than a city. They were not heroes, they were not legends. They were human, and the galaxy would never forget them.